Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready for their first-round playoff game against the Texans in Houston Saturday at 4:30. Back at work in Berea. Browns on the practice field. And some news before they hit the practice field. Browns have designated safety Grant Delpit for return from injured reserve. That's obviously really good news. They also signed Kalon Barnes to the practice squad. Now, Browns who return to practice today: Myles Garrett, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, Kareem Hunt, Pierre Strong, Newsome, and Njoku Bitonio. So a bunch of guys back on the practice field getting ready to go. Browns not practicing today: Dustin Hopkins unlikely to go, Cedric Tillman still in the concussion protocol, and Amari Cooper did not practice. Now, Cooper didn't practice, but it sounded like he should be good to go against the Texans team he set the Browns' receiving record against 3 weeks ago when they last played.
I'm just getting better every day. I'm running around now. So, it's just a typical injury that you have to work through.
Could you have played last week if you had to?
Yeah.
Well, you've been through the playoff thing before. How do you think the game changes? How does maybe your preparation change, the actual game planning change for you?
You just want to figure out a way to try to do a little bit more. It's more intent behind what you're willing to sacrifice for your teammates to get to where you want to go. As far as what changes, from my experience, it seems like everything is just a little bit more heightened. Obviously the stakes are, but when you're out there on the field, it seems like teams, the game plan is just on point. Because I look at it like, well, it feels like, you don't have any room for error.
With that, let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, obviously Cooper, a huge part of what the offense is with Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I mean, he toasted the Texans last time, literally, and he played that whole game. He told us last week that he injured that heel on the second catch, so he literally played the whole game with the injury. Now, I was surprised he didn't practice today. I did see him sitting there with the trainer, and he was just resting. He does get a lot of times Wednesday off anyway. But, yeah, he said he's good to go. He said he could have played last week against the Bengals. So I don't expect them to be without him. In fact, they got 5 other guys, were out there today, as you were talking about. So I think they're going to be about as healthy as they've been in a long time.
All right.
Obviously, without Dustin Hopkins.
Yeah, Dustin Hopkins unlikely to go, and that's a big loss. Another addition, though, getting some well-deserved recognition. Jim Schwartz was named the Browns defensive coordinator, named the Pro Football Talk Assistant Coach of the Year for 2023. Fred, you and I have talked about it at length. That's well-deserved, and this defense has turned around in large part because of Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it on here, and I've written about it since they hired him, that I think that could be the most impactful hiring. And I think it was, because he really changed the culture. Sure, they brought in some good players on defense, but I think Jim Schwartz had a lot to do with that. Some of these veterans that they brought in, Zadarius Smith and Oko Okoronkwo and Dalvin Tomlinson and Mo Hurst and Shelby Harris and Rodney McLeod. You can go down the list. They've all made a big impact, and it's changed the narrative. When this team last year in the defense really was, in my opinion, soft, and they've been aggressive. They haven't been perfect, but I think, depending on what statistic you want to look at, they've been in the top 10 almost all year, and they finished, number 1 in yards allowed and third downs and many of the important categories. So, yeah, Jim Schwartz, the biggest negative would be, and it's good for him, is that they could lose the guy. There's some openings, and I would think that a number 1 defensive coordinator, depends on how the Browns do. That's how it always seems to go. I know that age might be a little against him, and they trend to go with the offensive side. But yeah, he's had a big impact, and it would be a big loss if they end up losing him.
So Jim Schwartz today talked about how he approaches the playoffs and how he wants his team to approach them.
I think playoffs come down to, who can be themselves the best, if that makes sense. Can we be the best version of ourselves versus the Texans being the best version of themselves? I think that's, that's when it's all said and done. You've got 17 games under your belt. There's not a whole lot you're going to pull out that another team hasn't seen, and really at this point of the year, people are going with what they do best. And, so I think that has a lot to do with it. I really can't worry about him and how he'll treat the game as much as we're just focused on our guys and how we're going to treat the game. We know it's the playoffs. Every mistake is amplified. Every big play is amplified. A mistake can send you home. A big play can help you advance, and that's what it is. It's single elimination football.
And Fred, it's got its defensive coordinator and a Super Bowl champs back in 2017. It's his approach resonates with players a little bit more than that. The other thing is the Browns are happy to be in the playoffs. It doesn't appear like they're the least bit satisfied or surprised.
No, I've been impressed with the locker room this week. Even third-year player JOK, it's very business. Like they're not acting like, we're just happy to be here. There's very business approach to it, and you kind of like to see that. And I think that's what I go back to, the culture, the veteran presence of guys like Rodney McLeod, that been there, done that. Zadarius Smith, Jim Schwartz, Joe Flacco has really, brought that. And this team knew back in Greenbrier they were talented, but it was, could they come together? And I think they really have come together. They've been able to overcome, things that I wasn't sure they could overcome, the injuries and setbacks and so forth. So they really believe that they can do whatever they want. And now you have the defense. If Delpit's back, virtually everybody that their front line, other than Rodney McLeod and obviously a dinged up Okoronkwo, and Mo Hurst, the starting lineup, everything is pretty much intact. And I think that bodes well. For a while you thought this team, after you lost Chubb and Watson and the tackles, that you could rely on the defense and hope they could win games for you and hope the offense just wouldn't screw things up and win defensively. And I still think you have that, but now you have a legitimate offense with Joe Flacco that scored 31 points a game in the last 4 games he's been at quarterback. So now they have a chance to put up points, but the defense still, I think, will be able to play with anybody and to be able to hold teams down.
Yeah, some good individual news as well. The NFLPA, so the Players Association, first team All-Pro players. Browns get 2 of them, and these are voted on again by the players. Myles Garrett, Joel Bitonio both earn All-Pro honors. Joel Bitonio talked about the honor.
It's a cool honor. Those are the guys you compete against. The guys, I think it's like left guards vote for left guards and D tackles and those guards. So like the guys you truly compete against on a week-to-week basis, guys that watch the film. I think they started it last year, and so it's a cool new one. I think it's a great way to get the players' input, because with the Pro Bowl you get fans, players, coaches. APL Pro is the writers and the media, and I think it's just a different way to get guys' opinions on who's playing good football. So it's always cool to be recognized by the guys you go against.
Fred, the fact that it's players who play your position and those you play against carries a little bit of weight with the players, without question.
Yeah, it is. And, when the Browns sometimes get snubbed when they shouldn't. And, so, in the Pro Bowl, like you said, they had 11 guys recognized, 5 on the Pro Bowl and 6 first alternates, So when you think about that, that's about half your starting lineup. So they do have good players on this team, and that's not counting guys like Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson and Jack Conklin, guys who were lost for the season. So, we said all along this was a talented team, probably the best talent I've covered since I've been doing this, but would they be able to come together as a team? And I think they've done that and more. They've actually come together even stronger, and it's good to see guys, like Myles Garrett, Joel Bitonio, get recognized by their peers.
So the quarterback that the Browns are going for got an honor today. CJ Stroud, named AFC Offensive Player of the Week for Week 18. Threw for 264 yards, 2 touchdown passes, 134.1 passer rating. Completed almost 77% of his passes against the Colts. An interesting note here. Second most games with 250-plus yards passing by a rookie in NFL history. He's done it now 9 times. Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz on what he has seen with C.J. Stroud.
Obviously a rookie, but has command that goes beyond usually the scope of a rookie. Decisive with the ball, accurate passer, buys some time, makes big plays down the field. I think when it's all said and done, the fact that he's passed for as many yards as he has without turning the ball over is really impressive for a young guy. Usually, the cost of doing business, if you're going to throw a lot of yards, is you also turn the ball over a lot. And, it's been impressive what he's been able to do. We're going to have to play tight coverage. We're going to have to stay after him in the pass rush. And those are, and we're going to have to limit run after the catch because he does a good job of giving his guys opportunities to run after the catch, including Nico Collins, who's that's one of the things he does best.
And Fred, we'll talk a little bit more next segment about Stroud, but it's a guy that's played really well, but the Texans really haven't played a defense. And they played the Jets. They haven't really played the get after it, in-your-face style of defense that the Browns intend to bring, I believe.
Yeah, I liked what Schwartz said today, and I still have to believe. In fact, he was quick to point out because statistically, rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs do not go that great. But he was quickly shot that down and said, yeah, I remember one of the rookies that won a game was Joe Flacco against his defense when he was the defensive coordinator in the playoffs for the Tennessee Titans. He was quick to point that out. And I think that, though, with Schwartz's experience, I have to believe that he's going to be able to dial up some things that maybe CJ Stroud hasn't seen before and to slow him down. Don't forget, Dave, sure, the Texans were missing a couple guys when the Browns played them, including Stroud. That's a big difference. But the Browns were ahead 36-7, and their touchdown was on a 98-yard kick return. So they pulled the starters with 6 minutes to go on defense, and if you remember, Texans scored 2 quick touchdowns to end the game. So it wasn't as close. Defensively, basically, they pitched a shutout. I don't expect the same thing, but I still think that against that offensive line, one of the things that'll help them is the experience with Lamar Jackson and keeping him from running. He's their 3rd leading rusher. He's not known for that as much as Lamar Jackson, but he can extend plays. And you have JOK, who's done a good job on keeping track of the quarterback. And I think if they can make him get rid of it quicker than he wants to and not beat him with his legs, I think that will slow him down. I think that will bode well for the defense this week.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. We will continue talking Browns-Texans playoffs. Stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million!
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Anquan Boldin was a teammate, Joe Flacco's, with the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl back in 2012. He talked about what he has seen from Flacco with his success with the Browns.
I'm loving it, man, seeing Joe out there. Joe is Joe, man. He's so cool. He's so collected, calm. And I think, he's added a spark to the Cleveland Browns. Many people thought they were done after Deshaun went down, but, you see Joe come in and provide the quarterback play that they needed. And, he's been a burst of energy for them. And I think everybody is shocked by it. I'll be honest. I'm shocked to see him playing. I think about it. When we played in the Super Bowl together, it was 2012. And it's 11, 12 years later, and he's still out there throwing it around like it was just yesterday. So I'm glad to see Joe, playing well.
Fred, when you hear former teammates and guys like Bolden talk, they talk about how cool and composed he is. I know you wrote an article. Browns are kind of drawn on that playoff experience, and it seems like it's given everybody some confidence.
Well, think about it. It was 2012. That's now 12 years ago. And a lot of these guys on the Browns are mid-20s. Even if they're 26, 27, they probably wouldn't have been driving yet. They've been high school or junior high watching games. And he might have been a guy they had their poster of. And now he's in the huddle. He's very level-headed, very even-keeled. And he's got to be a calming influence for these young guys that are nervous. In fact, several of them talked about that during the comeback win against the Bears in the final drive. He's kind of got the demeanor of Kevin Stefanski, but now you have him in the huddle. So I just think he's got the been there, done that attitude, and he's fresh. He's rejuvenated because he thought he was done. Nobody called. And now he's kind of got nothing to lose. And so he's just enjoying it, and he's bringing a wealth of experience. The players referred to it all week. He was one of the guys that spoke that had been to the Super Bowl in a team meeting, and they were hanging on every word, on that. This truly is 1-0, because if you go 0-1, your season's over, and you might never play again. So, this is where a lot of the approach could really help them. But I just think that I never saw this coming, and obviously the whole NFL did not, because as quarterback driven the NFL is, nobody called the guy, in close to a year, and it wasn't like no quarterbacks were going down. Most of the NFL felt he was really done as far as a quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, without question. We've alluded to this. So Amari Cooper set a franchise record with 265 yards receiving the last time the Browns played the Texans. He talked about the biggest key in his mind about playoff football.
Preparation, 100% the biggest key. Like Coach CEO alluded to earlier in the week, more playoff games are lost than won. And the reason that they're lost is because, guys aren't as prepared as they should be. The errors, the mistakes, they cost you. So you got to be prepared.
So speaking of that, you guys have turned the ball over more than any team in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
They've turned the ball over the least. It's the first time in NFL history that's happened in a playoff game. Is turnovers part of that? You guys have overcome that all year? Or are you guys just a team that can overcome turnovers?
Yeah, that's the biggest stat in football, turnover differential. The thing about it is that we have a clear goal, though. We know that stat just like like the back of our hand. We've turned the ball over. They haven't turned the ball over much. So, going into it, that's why we're preparing. That's why we work on our drills and practice, because we need to fix that.
Yeah, Fred, the turnovers are a nasty thing with the Browns. They've only had one game where they didn't turn the ball over, the Cardinals. They've had 2 games where they won the turnover battle, 3 where they pushed it, and somehow they have figured out a way to be 11-6. If they figure out how to not turn the ball over, they're going to be awfully tough to beat.
Yeah, and it's kind of starting from scratch this week. When you look at the stats and what Flacco's done, I think 13 touchdowns, but 8 interceptions. it seemed like two of them against the Texans were like punts. You know, they couldn't kick field goals, so they threw it and had nothing to lose. He didn't worry about an interception in the end zone. It was either going to be a touchdown interception or a pass interference, something like that. And so I think there was 2 or 3 that went off hands of receivers. I can think of Cedric Tillman once or maybe twice. And so, I think that's part of the risk you have with Flacco, that he is confident in his arm. But, I mean, what's your alternative? And a lot of those came from some other players, that they had filling in earlier. And so, yeah, it is. When you give up the ball 37 times, I mean, that doesn't give you much chance. And like you said, to be 11-6, you really have overcome some things. So look at it this way: the Texans could be due. It usually says things kind of even out a little, and maybe they'll have some turnovers this week, and the Browns can take advantage of those. They got a couple interceptions last time. I realized it wasn't against Stroud, but that's a big category, and they're aware of it. They just have to play clean football. If they can play clean football, I really like their chances this week.
So CJ Stroud, the rookie quarterback, talked about what he has seen with this Browns defense that he's studying.
They're a great team. I'm excited for this matchup again. I think they're the number 1 defense for a reason. They do a lot of special things. Starts up front. Of course, Myles Garrett is one of the best players to ever play this game, and he proves it week in and week out. And their linebackers do a great job. Six is a great linebacker. He's a great player. And then on the back end, they do a good job of having sticky coverage and things like that. So this got to be on our A game and execute at a high level, and I'm excited for the matchup.
We talked a little bit about it last segment, Fred. I think Jim Schwartz is going to disguise some things. I think he's going to pressure him. And that coverage is not going to allow any easy throws. Take away the easy throws from a rookie and make them work.
Yeah, that's what I would think. And, he's done it all year. But I just think that, this is it's a different speed in the playoffs. And I expect, a fresh Myles Garrett. Zadarius Smith had one of his best games. They designed to try to, take Garrett out as most. And Smith was running wild. Now you have Okoronkwo back. And I think the push from the inside. And he mentioned JOK. I think he's going to have a big game. And so I just feel the defense will have something that the rookie hasn't seen or experienced. And I just think the experience of the Browns in this situation will help them, and especially on the defensive side.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking Browns, Texans, Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Sean O'Hara, David Carr, 2 former players. Who they trust more, Joe Flacco or CJ Stroud? This from NFL Network's NFL Total Access.
The impressive aspect that CJ Stroud brings is he doesn't play like a rookie. Like we keep calling him a rookie quarterback, and we even heard Flacco talk about the decision-making. CJ Stroud is aggressive without being reckless. And I think when you look at the way he's taking care of the football, just 5 interceptions on the entire season, and 3 of them came in one game against Arizona. That was his only clunker. So, yes, that is huge. But give me Old Faithful. You said Tom Brady for the Cleveland Browns. I look like Bernie. Give me the experienced guy. Give me Old Faithful, Old Yeller, whatever you want to call him, Bernie Kosar. Joe Flacco is the guy that I trust with the playoffs. He's got the track record, the pedigree. to go with it. He's never lost a wild card playoff game in his career. So I like the guy that's done it and doesn't have any blemishes to his career.
Yeah, and we could have shown 12 plays, 15 plays from that game. He was pinpoint accurate down the field like that all day. I mean, so he's already faced that team, right? So he has a feeling of space, of what they're going to do to try to slow him down. It was incredible to watch. Hopefully he can duplicate it, because I agree with Sean. I would lean on the experience here. He's playing with house money. That's what it feels like. He's getting a new lease, right? They pulled him off the couch. He was with 5 kids running around like he didn't know what his life was.
Yeah, Fred, if you're asking me, do I trust Joe Flacco more or CJ Stroud, I don't understand how you couldn't trust Joe Flacco more.
Yeah, I mean, as far as he's done it, we've seen him do it, for 5 games, and he was really in a rhythm. I just think that, like I said earlier, that he has nothing to lose. He's got 7 road wins. Think about that when you think of Tom Brady's tied with him all-time road wins in playoffs. Obviously, Brady played a lot of home games, but if he wins this week, he would be the all-time leader in road wins in the playoffs in the NFL. And so I just think you got to give him the edge because of that experience. I mean, when the game's on the line, you have a guy that's been there and done that. And I just think that it's a great opportunity for the Browns and for Flacco this week.
All right, let's look some key. Who do you think has a big game? Who do you think steps up, has a big game in the moment, and some of the keys for the Browns to get the win and move on to the next round of the playoffs?
Yeah, I think the defense has to play well. I think that, as I've been saying all year, if the defense can keep you in the game, and that starts with Myles Garrett, he should be rested. I know they put a lot of attention on him and with Laramie Tunsil, their Pro Bowl left tackle, but I think he will be refreshed and he will find a way to disrupt. I also expect Zadarius Smith to step up and also have big games. So I expect a heated pass rush to put pressure on the young guy, and I expect Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to have a big game. This is on turf, indoors. He just seems faster. He's been flying all over the field. He seems locked in, and I think that he can make a big difference in this game as well. On offense, I think they're going to obviously try to put everything to not give Flacco time. He's not that mobile, obviously, but last time he was able to pick him apart. They're going to throw a lot at him, so it means his safety valves and get the ball out quick. I think a guy like David Njoku could have a big game because he's been the go-to guy since Flacco's come, besides Amari. With Amari Cooper, they're going to give a lot of attention to him and say, we don't want this guy to beat us. So I think that turns the attention to David Njoku, Elijah Moore, and look out for Marquise Goodwin. They got him to throw the deep ball. The only time they've been able to do it this year, he hasn't been on the field a lot, was with Flacco, 57 yards. I would not be surprised they open up with a bomb to Goodwin like they did to Cooper the last time. So I just think that, there's a lot of guys that can step up, but it might not be on offense the guys that have been doing it, every week.
What about things that concern you with the Texans? What would concern you and make you think, man, that might cause some trouble?
Well, it concerns me is their pass rush. I mean, they lost Will Anderson, and he didn't play last time. Their number 3 pick, and Grenard went out in the second play. I don't know. Those guys haven't practiced through today. I don't know their standing. But, you get the pass rush with them and Jerry Hughes against Garen Christian and James Hudson. That could really, not give Flacco a chance to throw the ball. So they need to move the ball on the ground to set up a little more play action, I think. The Colts showed you that you could run at them, and I would really try to get that going as well.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Always a pleasure, Dave. Thank you.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Always really good and insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Tim Bielik from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer straight ahead. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Former Texans quarterback David Carr with an analysis of some of the things that Joe Flacco is doing for the Browns.
For the Cleveland Browns, okay, we got a two-high safety. Now, the Browns are a run team, a play-action team. This is a drop-back scenario. Okay, this guy just rolled off his couch. This is against the Texans, Week 16 they played, right? Flacco had an amazing day. Watching Njoku, he's just going to work the middle of the field right here. Now, it looks like there's a lot of space, right? Because you're going to stretch the defense, right, with these guys on the outside. But I want you to watch what this throw is, right? First of all, he has pressure in his face. But, I mean, look at this. Like, that's an incredible placement of the ball. We're going to watch it again just because it's fantastic. Up and over the linebacker, down inside, the two safeties, perfectly thrown pass. I also love what they do off the play action pass, right? He's going to actually play action here, and we're going to get a vertical route. We're going to vertical element down here. Two guys going down the field, and then we're going to bring Amari across the field here, okay? The beautiful part about this isn't just the route concept, okay? It's how he moves in the pocket at 38 years old. Like, this isn't just a guy that's stagnant, all right? First of all, he makes the throw. It's incredible. It's a great pass, right? But as we spin this thing around, that's where the beauty is, right? This is where you don't really appreciate what Joe can do, because you shouldn't be able to move like this at 38, all right? So he steps up, he goes to run. Okay, now right here in this scenario, a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of veteran guys, they're going to get what they can get. Maybe they take a sack, right? But actually, he's going to keep his eyes up the field, and you can't even see the receiver that he's going to throw it to. It's back over here to the left, perfectly thrown in stride. So I love what Joe's doing.
Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Tim, when you look at that, those are the things that Tom Brady did in the pocket later in his career that enabled them to keep winning.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen so many tools with Joe Flacco, since he's come to Cleveland. The arm strength clearly is still there with him. You see, just the mobility that I think we were all kind of surprised with. I think that's really the number one thing that stood out to me. That play in particular, that David just showed, how he kind of stepped up and moved through the pocket and then kind of threw off balance going to his right with the throw going to his left to make that big play. All those tools are still there, and I think the fact that, he came in middle of the season, he really didn't have to worry about taking the hits, in preseason, early, the regular season. I think that was an advantage for him. And it really is remarkable to see him just come up right away and perform the way he has, in the middle of the season, and basically getting them into this position where they're in the playoffs and have a chance to make a run.
So Joe Flacco was asked yesterday what it takes to win in the playoffs.
Everybody puts so much thought into what it takes to win these games, and it's doing the simple things the best you can and just playing good fundamental football. And this is the time of the year where that stuff shows up. Obviously there's going to be plays made, and guys are going to make a name for themselves that, something's going to happen over the next 5 weeks that we're going to remember forever. And those are the things that you kind of see. But it's just about playing fundamental physical football and playing a full 60 minutes. And no matter what's going on at the moment, being able to keep the blinders on and keep moving forward.
So 2 things about that, Tim. Mention the next 5 weeks. They're planning on a pretty deep playoff run. And the other thing is it's not getting too carried away with anything other than do the little things right.
Yeah, and I think that's, how you always win and lose in the NFL. It's the fine margins, it's the attention to detail. Who does the simple things better? Who doesn't commit penalties? Who doesn't, commit self-inflicted mistakes? Who doesn't have those things pop up, is a team that's going to win the game, especially for the Browns, when they're going to probably have to play at least 2 road games, maybe 3 to get to if they want to get to the Super Bowl. But, I mean, Joe Flacco, hearing him talk, obviously he's a guy who's been there and done that. He's gone to a Super Bowl. He's made a couple deep playoff runs as well. He knows exactly what it takes to get there. Even if he hadn't been in the playoffs in a while, you still don't forget those sorts of things. This is also a team that's still got a handful of guys that were around that 2020 playoff run. Myles Garrett, David Njoku, Joel Bitonio, among others. They were there 3 years ago when the Browns knocked off the Steelers in Pittsburgh and went into Kansas City. And, who knows what would have happened in that game if they were able to get that 3rd down stop on Chad Henne or that 4th down pass breakup on that play to Tyreek Hill. Who knows what kind of happens in that game. But, this is the time of the year, especially early on, when you trust your veterans. And there's no reason for this team not to trust in Joe Flacco the way he's played the last 4 games.
Yeah, the other thing is there's a little bit of a different attitude with this team. They expected to be here, and they expect to win. It's a very subtle thing, but you hear it pretty much across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the approach they've had to take this year with all the injuries. I mean, it's one thing to say next man up. It's another to be about next man up. And for all the injuries they've had to still be at this point where they're 11-6, going into Houston on Saturday. I mean, when you can win all these games despite all these different guys being out of the lineup, despite losing your top 3 offensive tackles, despite, being out at one point your top 3 safeties and needing to rely on 2 UDFAs, to start at safety, being out without Nick Chubb for almost the entire season, to still be 11-6, I'm sure there's got to be a lot of confidence in this team that if they can overcome those things, that there's nothing that they can't handle. It's just a matter of go out and executing when it matters.
All right, so this is from CBSSports.com. They have the playoff quarterback power rankings. And I don't agree with them, but that's all right. They go Brock Purdy, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson, 1, 2, 3, and 4. CJ Stroud checks in at 7. Baker Mayfield, 12. Joe Flacco, 13. And Mason Rudolph checking in at 14. Flacco was once condemned for his conservative checkdowns, but at 38, he's embraced endless downfield attacking. Coming off the bench for Cleveland, is it sustainable? That's debatable. I know there's a couple of things about that. He was checking down in it's similar offense, different personnel. Kevin Stefanski has seemed to unlock a way to utilize the strengths that Joe Flacco has. And the offenses appear to fit him perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who's, 38 years old, who could still have some mobility, but has the arm strength to hit all 3 levels of the field. I mean, I don't know how this, this has been a perfect fit. And really, I mean, it has defied logic in a lot of ways. I mean, guys who were, sitting on the couch for the first 9-10 weeks of the season aren't supposed to come in like Joe Flacco has and, absolutely just play like he's never, like he's been playing all season, or he's been like a Pro Bowler for the last 3 or 4 years prior. I mean, the way he's playing is surprising, but the talent, I think, at the skill positions, I think, has been there with Amari Cooper and David Njoku. It's just a matter of the guys, the right guy being able to unlock it. But putting him 13th out of 14, I do not agree with this either. I was even just looking right now at Baker Mayfield's stats the last 2 games. Obviously got the Buccaneers into the playoffs, but even a look in the last 2 games, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions against the Saints. Didn't throw a single touchdown pass against Carolina last week, and they really had to struggle to kind of put that one away. Obviously they're in. Good for Baker to get back to the playoffs in Tampa Bay. It seems like they've revitalized his career a bit, but Flacco behind Baker really just doesn't, it just doesn't feel right. And I feel like Flacco should be far higher on this list. Same with Lamar Jackson. He shouldn't be 4th. I think he should be at least number 2 behind Josh Allen.
Yeah, and if you're going to take CJ Stroud, I understand he's had a really good year. He's going to be Rookie of the Year. He's still a rookie. They historically don't do well come playoff time. Now, he could prove me wrong, but I'm betting against a rookie in the playoffs pretty regularly. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break. We'll hear what CJ Stroud has heard from his coaches and the veterans about playoff football. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Ooh, holiday gold! The $20 scratch-off?
It has 100 times multiplier. I could win $1 million.
Psych! I got merry and bright.
No fair.
It has a 200 times multiplier. I could win $2 million.
Game on the back.
Game on the back. Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game on the back! Game.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. CJ Stroud, quarterback for the Texans, a rookie, on what veterans and his coaches have told him about the difference in playoff football in the NFL.
They say there's no difference. It's just what you make it. And for me, I think that's one thing that I can appreciate is the honesty, just not blowing things up with them. Like, they're always going to be honest with me and not tell me something's bigger than what it is or lesser than what it's going to be. It's just football. Like, just be yourself is what they always tell me. So I've played in playoff games before, big games, and the less that you put pressure on yourself, I feel like the more you just execute and do your job, then that's when good things happen.
Tim, playoff football's different. It just is. And most rookies. Now, Joe Flacco won as a rookie. So it has been. I think they're 10-14 rookies making their debuts in the playoffs. So it's under 500. He's been really good. I'm not questioning that. I'm not minimizing that. He has not seen a defense like the Browns have. There aren't many of them in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, the closest one he's seen is all the way back in his debut against Baltimore. And, they're obviously, struggled in that game. But, so do most rookie quarterbacks going up against teams like the Baltimore Ravens and the things they present. But, with the Browns, with this matchup, obviously this is going to be a much tougher challenge for the Browns than what they had, way back on Christmas Eve because Stroud didn't play in that game. But, this is going to be interesting how Jim Schwartz kind of schemes this up, having a little time, to kind of scheme it up a little bit. Obviously, having played against these guys before, kind of understanding what worked and what didn't work, what you might have to adjust with CJ Stroud, what kind of different pressures you're going to have to bring to him. And I think, it's just an opportunity for Jim Schwartz to really, show that creativity, and especially helping to get some of those guys, that extra rest, getting Myles Garrett a week off, all these other guys that sat for a week, even potentially getting Grant Delpit back potentially on Saturday. Obviously getting him activated off IR was, a big boost. Seems like a big boost for the Browns. We'll see if he plays on Saturday, but I think in a weird way, I kind of agree with Stroud, with CJ, because the way I see it with the playoffs, it's like, yeah, everything around it is bigger. You're the only game on television. I mean, they're all staggered, so it's one at a time, and it's win or go home. But in some sense, the game on the field is still 100 yards, from goal line to goal line, and 52.5 yards on sideline to sideline. So in that sense, the game is still the same. It's just a matter of, playing against elite competition. You're not going to go against bad teams to get to the Super Bowl. You have to beat some really, really, really good teams.
Yeah, and everything's magnified. Mistakes are magnified. Big plays are magnified. So Denzel Ward, Browns cornerback, really good cover corner. About the challenge of facing CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, his favorite receiver.
Real big challenge. Like, this is a new quarterback for their team. Like you said, he's a Buckeye, so all the Buckeyes are great. So no, he's a great quarterback though. Very accurate passer. Puts the ball on the money. Can make all the throws on the field. Gets the ball to his playmakers. Goes through his progression. So he's been having a real good year, and is going to bring a challenge to us that I think we're up for though.
He hasn't turned the ball over much at all, especially for a rookie quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
How big is forcing him into some mistakes going to be in this game?
Yeah, it'll be huge, but we just got to do our assignment, and hopefully we can force some turnovers and create those. But like I said, he's a very accurate quarterback, and it's going to be tough, but I think we could do it, though.
He seems to work real well with that Michigan receiver.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of Nico Collins?
Yeah, he's a real good receiver as well. Big receiver, got good hands, good routes, probably his favorite target out there. So they definitely got that connection out there that we're going to have to lock on to and try to eliminate those guys.
So here's the thing, Tim. There isn't another team that has cornerbacks, Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, MJ Emerson, that's going to play aggressive man-to-man. He has not seen that combined with a defensive line that's going to get after it.
Yeah, and again, going back to what I was saying earlier, some of these guys are also rested, having not played in a week, and you got to imagine, getting that little bye, obviously not playing against Cincinnati on Sunday. That's got to be huge for some of these guys. And, obviously they got a chance to see a little bit of Nico Collins on Christmas Eve, but it's one thing when Case Keenum and Davis Mills are throwing the football to him. It's another thing when CJ Stroud's throwing the football to him. And I think, what obviously hurts the Texans is, unfortunate for them not having Tank Dell for the season, out for the rest of the season with a leg injury. I mean, he was absolutely lighting it up as a rookie. It was tremendous to watch. So, but if your team going in this one, now you look at what Houston has to work with. Obviously, Nico Collins, breakout receiver, outstanding. Loved him in the draft in 2021 because he had tremendous size and he's really broken out this season with the help of Stroud. But because you're the Browns, you have those three corners. I imagine, my own opinion, I imagine Emerson would line up a bunch just because he has the best size matchup to go against him. You don't know Noah Brown hasn't practiced the last 2 days for Houston. If he plays, that makes this matchup a little more interesting because you can't just completely shade the coverage over to him and they're Dalton Schultz and whoever else to beat you in the passing game. But with a guy like Collins and with a guy like Stroud throwing the football, you have to expect every once in a while they're going to get theirs. But the big thing is for the secondary, they just got to limit those chances and don't let them get extra opportunities to turn good gains into great plays because they're talent enough where they're going to hit a couple. I mean, it's the playoffs.
So along those lines, this is playoff teams' record against other playoff teams this year. So 2023, Bills are the top one at 5-1, Eagles 6-2, Ravens at 6-3, Niners and Steelers 5-3, and Browns 4-3. Now, keep in mind, AFC North teams are at a little bit of a disadvantage because there's 3 of the 4 that made the playoffs, and the Bills didn't play an AFC North playoff team. And again, there were 3 of them. Texans down at 2-2, against playoff teams. Kind of shows you the strength of the division as well.
I mean, you could just see that just from the fact that this division had everybody with a winning record, that the last place team in the AFC North went 9-8, and that was the Bengals. But, when you look at obviously those records, again, you bring out the Browns 4-3, splitting with both the Ravens and the Steelers. If the Browns win this game in Houston and then they go to Baltimore, you got to imagine they're the team outside of Buffalo that has the absolute most confidence that they can go into Baltimore and they can win because they've done it already. They've already proven that they can go into Baltimore, face a 14-point deficit, and come out of there in the fourth quarter and find a way to win the ball game. And that's huge when you have a team that has just done it, and that they know how to do it. They know what that feels like. I think that's just a big confidence booster. And then you look at obviously just Buffalo, even they're 5-1. Yeah, they haven't played the AFC North, but they've played the Cowboys and the Eagles out there. So they play some great teams. And honestly, outside of Baltimore, that would be the team that worries me the most because they're red hot. They've basically been in the playoffs for the last 5 weeks, basically need to win out to get in. And I mean, in a one-game season like the playoffs, Josh Allen is one of the last guys you would absolutely want to face because he's one guy who can beat you pretty much single-handedly.
All right, so before we go to break, Dan Orlovsky, another former NFL quarterback. The problems that the Browns have caused the Texans with first down play action.
How are they going to defend the first down play action pass game? And it's really what coverage do you feel better about? This is going to be middle field open, okay? This is their first snap of the game. Middle field open means there's 2 safeties. Cleveland's going to try to attack the middle of the field in this. They're going to put 2 tight ends on the field, 1 back. They're in 12 personnel. See that cut split by the receiver? Forces that corner to play off and outside. So now you have leverage. This is what they love, palms or quarters. Everyone's got a quarter of the field. That safety's got vision on that number 2 guy, which is the tight end. Sees the ball fake, and he's flat-footed for a second. That's enough. Coop already has leverage. I've got 8 guys in protection, and all he has to do is basically run vertical, keep the corner outside, and just allow that safety to drift horizontally instead of vertically, and there's a big ball. That's on first down. So that's first down versus middle field open. Now you go to another first down. This time it's going to be middle field closed. He's really going to run a post corner or what we call a shake route. The pocket is great for Joe Flacco because first down and play action, and it's essentially a one-on-one route. So you see the big ball down the field versus two safeties. They're again going to play one safety in the middle of the field. He's going to cut the backside. This is that bootleg that Mina's talking about, and it's a double move. Great pocket for Joe Flacco. Amari Cooper's running a comeback and go. The tight end in the over. Joe's just staring at the tight end to get the safety to drive it because that's a traditional bootleg look, and it's one-on-one. So all those are on first down. There's two more that we didn't add to that tape because it's long, and I think that's the question. Is Houston showed two safeties? Not great. They show one safety? Not great. I'd also say this, even if it's zone, will they just marry Stingley on Coop no matter what?
And Tim, D'Amico Ryans was asked that, and he said, we don't do that. They don't travel guys with – they may want to make an exception with Amari Cooper.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk about it later when I look back at the matchups of the Browns offense versus the Texans defense, because Stingley, when you look at the advanced numbers, was very good. But the big thing I got out of that is there's a couple things. Number one, obviously Kevin Stefanski, working with a more traditional quarterback like Joe Flacco, kind of gets the opportunity to go back to kind of the Gary Kubiak, Shanahan-esque play action bootlegs. And that's kind of what you saw in that last play, which I believe was the 75-yard touchdown pass to Amari Cooper. When you can have those bootlegs, it really doesn't always matter how good the offensive line is, because that when you can move the pocket like that, it kind of negates some of the tools that the edge rush has. And we know, obviously, that's the strength of the Texans is their edge rush with Jonathan Grenard and Will Anderson. But the second thing, and the thing that sticks out, is the Browns are kind of proof that you don't need to be a really good running team right now to go play action. Even looking at the last, handful of games since Joe Flacco took over as a starter, the Browns have only had 2 games of rushing for 100 yards or more, and one of them was on Sunday in Cincinnati, and Flacco didn't even play in that game. So against a Houston team that's one of the best teams against the run, they're 6th against the run. They're obviously be geared up to go up, try to stop the run game, maybe less so because they've already seen the Browns. They would expect them to throw more, but the way Joe Flacco sells it, the action they have off the play action game and all those different routes and concepts that they have, that's what makes it lethal even when the threat of the run is not quite there.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one more time out, other side of the break. Jim Schwartz, does he see many similarities between this year's Browns team, 2017 Eagles team that he was the DC on the Super Bowl champs? Stay with us, you'll find out.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz won a Super Bowl back in 2017 as the defensive coordinator of the Eagles. Talked about the similarities between this Browns defensive unit and that Eagles defensive unit.
A couple of days ago, I was telling the team some of the similarities I saw between our team in 2017 with the Eagles, and probably the biggest one is how much the players enjoy each other. They genuinely root for each other and genuinely like to be together and practice. And that continuity has taken us through a lot of tough times this year. I mean, we've had some, we've had some things, put in our way over the course of the year. But, you don't see the frustration show on the field. You don't see guys throwing helmets or, yelling at each other, or you don't see the jealousy, or you don't see finger pointing. And, that was probably the thing that stood out the most between like our team and where we've been. A lot of people have made, thing of, lost a starting quarterback and veteran replaces him and multiple injuries and, things like that.
And really, Tim, those are the kind of things that Jim Schwartz fostered, the whole celebrate when you make a good, that's what that's aimed at.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said, for a group that, just enjoys being around each other. And I think when you have that chemistry, it genuinely makes it more fun to play. And when it's more fun to play, then you're more free, you can play faster. And that's, I think, what we've seen from the Browns all season. You can even see it off the field, with some of the stuff you see on the Browns social media with Greg Newsome, carrying around the little microphone, asking everybody, to sing their favorite Christmas song or whatever. You can kind of see that camaraderie really stand out. And, guys being so happy for each other. Even Sunday against the Bengals, when Myles Garrett came over to congratulate Isaiah McGuire for his first NFL sack. These guys seem like they genuinely enjoy being around each other and playing with each other, and I think that's a very underrated asset for this team.
All right, let's take a look. And I know you've written an article about it. So take us through Browns' defensive matchups against Texans' offense.
Yeah, the big thing I look at when I'm looking at the offense of the Texans versus the defense of the Browns have, the big thing I want to look at is, who's going to cover Nico Collins most of the time. Are they going to put, Martin Emerson on him, who I think matches up size-wise the best with Nico Collins? You got a 6'2" Emerson against a 6'4" Nico Collins. I think size-wise, that's the best matchup and what I'd be really looking at if I'm the Browns, because, again, Nico Collins is far and away the most important guy you want to match up with. Obviously, you got to worry about Dalton Schultz. If Noah Brown plays, he's another guy to worry about because CJ Stroud really unlocked him. But if you can really make things difficult for Nico Collins, and you really take away CJ Stroud's best target, I think that gives you a really good chance to create some problems. And on the offensive line, Laramie Tunsil and Myles Garrett, I mean, that is one of the better pass rush matchups you're going to get. Well, obviously, Myles getting the week off last week, gives him a chance to get healthier. And, Laramie Tunsil, we remember way back when the Texans had Deshaun Watson, they paid a massive price to get Laramie Tunsil from Miami and kind of be that cornerstone left tackle. And now here he is in Houston protecting CJ Stroud's blind side. And we know they're going to move Garrett around a lot. They move him from one side to the other. They'll play him in the interior. They'll move him all over the place. But when those two guys go one-on-one, I mean, that's one of the best one-on-one matchups I think you're going to see in these playoffs.
Let's flip it. Browns offense against the Texans defense. What are you looking at again? I know you've written an article about this as well.
Well, the big thing I want to look at is we talked a little bit about, Amari Cooper, how the Texans are going to try to contain him. Are they going to try to put Derek Stingley on him more, even though, like you said, with D'Amico Ryans, they're probably not necessarily going to do that. I think you do have to change things a little bit going from one matchup to another, considering, just how bad Amari Cooper just ran through that Houston secondary. I know they were missing some guys in the back end. Jimmy Ward went down with an injury, Steven Nelson. So they should have more veteran guys back there to contain Amari Cooper. So then I'm curious, how the Browns kind of adjust to that. Do they work more David Njoku in there? Do they, try and get Elijah Moore and David Bell more involved? Is it a game where Jerome Ford is going to have to be another big weapon out of the backfield? Those are the kind of things I'm looking at. And the other one to watch, and I know that Jonathan Bernard and Will Anderson, I'm looking at the injury report. Those two guys have been out of practice the last 2 days, both battling ankle injuries. If either one or both of those guys are back, that really changes the matchup on the offensive line for Teron Christian and James Hudson, because you look at those two defensive ends the Texans have, 19.5 combined sacks, 25 combined tackles for loss. Those guys are difference makers. And Will Anderson, everybody talks about, CJ Stroud, the smart move the Texans made. I wrote the night of the draft, about Nick Cassera kind of doing his own Sonny Weaver, trading up for Will Anderson. And the last couple weeks of the season, it has absolutely paid off. I mean, he's really come alive, the last month of the season. And if one of those guys or both of those guys plays most of the game or all the game, that's really going to change, I think, the advantage, change the calculus a bit of the offensive line battle, because obviously we have both of those guys available. That puts a lot of pressure on Christian and Hudson.
And they did get Anderson in against the Colts. He was kind of on a snap limit, and he would come in, and he did get a sack and did make an impact. All right, before I let you go, what's it look like if the Browns are going to come away with a win? What's it have to look like?
I think they got to be able to be, diverse on offense. I think, obviously they did not run the ball very well at all against the Houston Texans. It's easy to see why. The Texans have the number 6 run defense in the NFL. They're allowing 96.6 yards a game. They only had 54 in the initial matchup back on Christmas Eve. And I know the Colts just gave up, I was looking at the numbers, 227 yards to the Colts on Saturday night in Indianapolis. The Colts are probably one of the best run design teams in football as far as run scheme. So the Browns are going to have to at least try to find ways to run the football. I think that's something that Kevin Stefanski and the offense has to figure out. You know, they've seen what isn't going to work against this Texans front. And in some ways, they are similar to the Browns because you look at one particular stat that stood out to me, tackles for loss. These are the top 2 teams of the NFL in TFLs. The Browns have 113. The Texans have 105. So both these teams are going to get downhill and play downhill. And for the Browns, how can you kind of leverage that? Can you run enough to keep a defense honest so that they're not always, you know, kind of shading on slanting the coverage towards Cooper and Njoku? And I think whoever runs the ball really is going to have the best chance to win this game. For when it comes to the defense, same kind of thing. Can you make CJ Stroud have to beat you by himself? And I mean, if he does, more power to him because he's an outstanding player. But you don't want to have him be able to lean on a run game and, you know, take some pressure off him. You want to put this game squarely on CJ Stroud's shoulders and see if he's ready to beat you, because then you could lean on your secondary, lean on your pass defense, which has been outstanding all season. If the Browns can do those things, which they're certainly more than capable of, I think they can leave Houston with a win.
Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. Browns in the pages of the Plain Dealer, also on cleveland.com. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.